All right. Hello. My name is Dr. Juliana Zeikman. I'm an assistant professor at the psychology department. This is my second year at TAMUCC. A little bit about me. I got my master's and PhD at New Mexico State University in psychology. And here today to talk about managing your motivation and your research project. I think you're definitely on the right track, given the fact that you're here on Saturday, getting motivated. So that's a good start. Would you mind telling me what programs you're in?
I'm in counselor education.
Okay.
Curriculum and instruction.
Okay.
PhD program.
Okay. All right. So motivation. It's always good to define what we're talking about. It's just the general desire or willingness of someone to do something. Super general, very broad, and I think because we can apply it to various things and different things. So it's very important for us to recognize that our motivation to do anything, but in particular research, will not be constant. There are going to be moments where you're going to be pretty much saying, oh, just F everything, I don't want to do this right now, and just not want to do it. It will not be equally distributed, so you might feel motivated to do one part of your research project or one, prep for a grad class or something like that, but not the other one. So my recommendation of it, take advantage of it when you do have it, kind of try to roll it as much as you can. I always get motivated, especially when I can't do stuff. If I'm on an airplane or traveling, I'm like, oh, so much motivation. If only I had my laptop with me. You can always find some piece of paper, just even scribble something on it. So definitely take advantage of it when you do have it. And again, accept that sometimes you will not have it. The issue is if it's just a few days, then that's actually a good thing for you to kind of step away from the research project or from your agenda of things you need to do. But if it's kind of getting to the point of like, hey, I haven't done anything for like weeks or months or something like that, that can be actually problematic. And in that case, you need to start working on powering through it. So what I recommend doing is checklists are very helpful, I think, just literally writing down what you need to do, whether it's just anything relates to grad classes or that research project. And a lot of the time, even just that clicking, checking it off or crossing it off your list is a very nice gratification. So that can actually help you get motivated. I sometimes get myself motivated when I'm really not feeling it. If I did something, I add it to the list and then immediately cross it off, just to kind of be like, oh, okay, I completed something. And also rewarding yourself. I would obviously not go on a whole weekend vacation for writing 3 sentences, right? Make sure they're proportional, but reward yourself in any shape or form that works for you, whether it's a snack or a TV show or whatever you want. Just kind of keep yourself accountable for that, though. So if you set yourself, okay, I'm going to work on this section of the paper or on this particular class or something like that, if you're fooling yourself, you're the only one you're fooling, right? So kind of try to hold yourself accountable with that. So rewarding yourself is really helpful as well. I personally have a whiteboard in my office. So I have all my research projects on there, and I note in what stages they are at. So the goal is at some point, and obviously it's not going to happen within one day or even within a year. I think it took me 3 to 4 years to get to that stage of, I was recommended that you should have your different research projects at different stages. So like you should always have a research project that is under IRB review. You should always have a research project that you're data collecting. you should always have a research project where you're writing the manuscript. You should always have a research project that is under review or under revision or something like that. Because that way, if you get tired of looking at numbers and data analyzing, you can always go back to, working on something else. So that kind of helps with motivating and powering through it. Yes?
Yes. So I also have another feeling. I feel like, I have all these projects, they are not done. So that makes me feel even more anxious.
Yes, so that's the biggest problem I would say with academia and research is that the gratification of publishing, it takes sometimes a whole year, if not even longer. So that's why building those smaller checklists and rewarding yourself when you complete different sections is really important because you don't want to get discouraged, right? If you have something on your list said, publish research 1, it might take a while to cross it off the list, right? But if you write, analyze the results for research project 1, it's something more manageable and easier for you to accomplish and feel like, hey, I moved forward a step. All right, what's next? Just to be like, I want to publish this. It's awesome. It should be on your list, but you also need to be realistic. It might take a while. When you submit a paper for review, I don't know if you're aware of that, it can take between 2 to 3, sometimes 6 months for them to come get back to you. And sometimes it's with a revision, which then takes you a while to work on and then resubmit it again. And I had one project that was a whole year under this back and forth. So it can take a while. Any other questions about this component of motivating yourself? All right, so with respect to your research project, right, the motivation towards working on it should be related as well. In particular, finding your right advisor, mentor for you, I think is one of the most important things you can do for any research project. What do I mean by right is what is right for you. I don't think there is a concrete definition. So if you need a person who is going to be more hands-on, somebody who's going to be really like, all right, these are the steps we're going to be working through, then you should try and find a person like that. If you're more of like a free spirit, so to speak, like you're able to work independently without any supervision, then you don't necessarily need that step-by-step mentorship. You might get even like upset about it sometimes or something like that. So that's why it's important to find the right advisor for you. So first things first, you should make sure the person is available to be your advisor. The best thing is to ask them, email or stopping by their office and things like that. I think it's very helpful to not just stop by and be like, hey, would you like to be my mentor? But to kind of already have a more concrete plan on what you might be interested in researching, or why do you think that person might be a good mentor for you? Because that relates to the idea that if possible, try to make sure you and your advisor have similar research interests. And that can help tremendously because faculty can advise graduate students because the general mentorship process is fairly similar across, research interests and things like that. Hey, you need a research question, right? You need to do your lit review. You need to start writing, analyzing results. It doesn't really matter what variables you're analyzing. It might just be the same ANOVA. But if you have somebody who shares similar research interests, they already know the literature and they can help guide you much better in the right directions. They might already be able to tell you, hey, that question has been already answered, kind of saving you the time to do all that literature review and things like that. So that would be one big and important component that I would recommend. I specifically applied to work with my grad advisor because of his research interest, because I was really interested in those. Another component I would recommend, if possible, check out your advisor's publishing research record. So just to make sure that, again, any advisor who is available to be there and wants to be your advisor and mentor you, and they have research interest, you shouldn't cross them off just because they haven't published in a while or something like that. But I think it can be really advantageous for you if the advisor is really publishing. So for graduate students, we were always kind of like, are they pre-tenure? Because this assumption that like pre-tenure, you're like really trying to publish and get that tenure. That is not to say that faculty after tenure do not publish. That is completely wrong. They of course continue, but nope. Okay, so I would recommend looking at that as well. Also in particular, because you might have your own research project, but you might get tagged along on working on other research projects if the advisor has other kind of projects going on, and you might actually end up with many more publications than you would if the faculty is not as publishing or something like that. Any questions about this? All right. So once you find and identify your advisor mentor, I would start with a conversation about your expectations from the process. So your mentor advisor's expectations might be different than yours, and it's very important for you to be on the same page. So are we trying to, if it's a master's program, are we trying to get into a PhD program? Are we looking into more research-oriented or industry-oriented or practice-oriented, depending on your field, future? So kind of understanding those expectations will help both the advisor and yourself to kind of work together collaboratively towards those goals. I would advise to develop a concrete timeline with concrete goals and schedule. That kind of goes back to that motivation component and having those lists. You also need to understand that schedule is very likely to be adjusted because life happens, and just you thought I don't know, if you allocate a month for the IRB to be approved, it might take a month and a half, or it might be shorter, right? But you just need to be a little bit more flexible in your schedule, just because, again, life can happen, things can happen. You might take longer to analyze your results, or that paper that was under review might take longer to get reviewed, or something like that. I would highly recommend scheduling weekly or bi-weekly meetings, depending again on where you are in the research project. So definitely more frequent meetings, in my opinion, at the beginning, when you're kind of trying to figure things out, figure out your research question and things like that. And then you can definitely move to bi-weekly meetings again as needed. I think having those meetings will also keep your motivation going. Having another person holding you accountable for completing the goals that you set yourself will definitely put your butt into gear on working on the things you should be working. If you have questions, ask. It can be via the meetings, or if you just had a meeting and your next meeting in 2 weeks, but you have a question that is literally preventing you from continuing, email your mentor or your advisor. Never feel like you're bothering your advisor. They wouldn't have agreed to be your mentor or advisor if they didn't want to mentor and advise you. I had a really good relationship with my grad advisor. I would email constantly, just even like really quick questions, and it was really helpful in not getting me stuck at any stage in any research project that I had. And that kind of kept my motivation really going. He was also very good at responding within a few hours too, right? That's why getting that right advisor for you is really important. So I'm the type of person, I'm like, I ask a question, I kind of want an answer. So if I would have worked with somebody who takes a couple of days to respond to an answer, I would be going out of my mind. So that's another component to consider if you're okay when finding advisors and things like that. Any questions about this? Yes?
I don't. So I do feel like I'm constantly bothering my mentor. So
questions and reviewing work is not the same thing though, right? If it's a quick question, hey, am I entering this component correctly into SPSS, that's easier to answer than, hey, can you read this 20-page document? So that kind of makes sense that sometimes it takes a little bit longer to respond. You can, again, the communication between you and your advisor is very important. If you do feel like it's been a while, consider emailing and not like sending another email and be like, hey, don't want to be a bother, but just wanted to make sure, reminding you, especially if there's a deadline or something like that, right? If they're working on a letter of recommendation for like a grant or something that you submitted, you should be very on top of reminding them, so. Shush them. It's hard, but I mean, again, like I had those exactly the same ones when I was a graduate student, and now that I'm on the other side, I'm kind of like, I want my students to email me. Like, I want you to ask me questions. Like, if it's getting too much, I will let you know. I will tell you, okay, you know what? You're in the middle of the project now. Let's be a little bit more independent, or let's cluster those several questions into one email instead of just back and forth. But I just might be odd. I just have my phone wherever I go. Might changing soon. So it might be that like I just respond quicker to my students. And I would prefer, so think about it from this perspective. If you don't ask a question and you do something wrong or incorrectly, it's then your advisor's job to kind of correct that, and it might be actually more time consuming and more problematic to do so, rather than you double checking with them, is this the right way to do it? And you're saving both time, for your advisor and yourself. So I would say just power through that. Hi, am I bothering you? I always, even through, as I said, we were very quick on emails back and forth. I would always like, sorry for the bother, but, and then I would ask my question. So, plus if they don't want to answer your email, they won't answer your email, right? Like if you are bothering them and they don't want to answer in that particular day, they will answer the next morning. But if it's not a bother to them, might as well ask the question. That's my perspective. Yes, that's
really supportive. So just really trust that.
Yes. If you choose a good one, yes, I would say so. All right. So with respect to managing your schedule and keeping motivated, I personally find this kind of schedule very intimidating, but actually really helpful. Again, it's very unlikely you will stick to this schedule, but it's always good to have one. Plus, I love color coding. So I would recommend planning each day in your week, scheduling everything you have, whether it's classes, outside work, family, food, and of course, working on your research project. It's always better to overestimate the time you allocate for something than underestimate it. Worst case, you get 20 minutes to Facebook, right in between something or something like that. But I find it's very helpful to do this, and I think it really helps your motivation and kind of this idea of like, okay, check, I've completed this portion that I allocated myself for these times and things like that. With respect to being motivated towards working on your research project, I would highly recommend trying to find a topic that is inherently interesting to you. So I do research on gender inequality, perceptions of sexual assault and consent, perceptions of sexual health, and things like that. I got involved into this research when I went to see Easy A when I was an undergrad. I really loved the movie, got frustrated about the inequality in the portrayal of sexual behavior for the female character and the male characters, and I got really passionate about it. And I actually applied to work with my grad advisor because he was literally one of the people who was doing research on the sexual double standard. So finding that topic might not be very easy, but if you do, oh boy, oh boy. Once you're so interested, the motivation will be there because you will be interested in, okay, what other question we can answer about this? Can we figure it out? Just the way you will speak about the topic will get others motivated and passionate about it, and that will fuel your passion even further. Develop an outline for your project or paper before writing it. I don't always do it, and then I so very much regret it. I think, again, it goes back to getting yourself motivated for moving through the project, because if you have an outline and you start working on each and every section, it's easier for you to even see your progress and feel like you're actually advancing and moving along with it. So I always start with intro to the intro. I provide a general introduction to the topic. I think it's really important to both keep in mind and tell the reader when you're actually writing the research project, why is this important to study? So it shouldn't just be like because it's cool or it's interesting. Those are valid topics, but you should also try to think about the big picture, right? Answering this research question will help population X, or it will help us to diminish certain stereotypes, or it will help us to counsel better a certain population and things like that. And of course, that will then lead to what's the purpose of your research project? How is your research gonna help answer that big picture question? How is it gonna help us? Read previous literature, especially if it's a new topic for you, because think about it, it's completely new, so you need to learn that information. Once you get into your research niche, so for example, I'm in the sexual double standard, I don't necessarily need to review all the articles for every single project I start. I just need to review all the ones that have been recently published. Right? Because I'm more versed in it. But if I start a new project, then I need to obviously do some literature review. The issue with that is sometimes graduate students start reading previous literature, but they dwell on it too much. It comes from this understanding of like, I need to know everything. You need to understand that you will probably never know everything there is to know about even your research project or your research interest. So you need to kind of know where to stop. Get a general gist of what you need of the general project topic, trying to find a few older articles, because those might be the core ones, but also try to find more recent ones just to see what has been done, what has been updated, and things like that. But then, very importantly, you need to start writing. There is a whole book published by Tara Gray. She was the director of the Teaching Academy at New Mexico State University. They provided a lot of workshops on teaching techniques and things like that that both faculty and graduate students can take. And it's called Publish and Flourish. And she has 10 different steps outlining how to be a good publisher and how to flourish. And one of the core concepts that she says is you need to start writing daily. So her recommendation is, if possible, this should be the first thing you do in the morning. Well, obviously after you have breakfast and getting to school and all of that. But you should write daily, and you should write for 15-30 minutes. Before you start answering emails, before you open Facebook, before you do anything, coffee is okay. But you need to start writing. That doesn't mean looking up an article for a second. No, literally just the act of writing. You need to record how many minutes you write, or I personally record how many words I write. Regardless if you do minutes or words, I would say that you need to record that information, and you need to share your records. Find another graduate student, find even your mentor. They don't need to even open that email. Just give them a heads up. FYI, every day at 9:30, I'm gonna send you an email that will literally say how many words I wrote today. Feel completely, just ignore it if you want. You, of course, can do it with another graduate students. But this idea that when you record how much you write, you will start trying to beat your own record. You're going to start competing with yourself. You will also recognize that, hey, I didn't write anything yesterday. Hey, I didn't write anything yesterday. Hey, I didn't write anything yesterday. Holy cow, I should probably write something today. So seeing those numbers, those zeros, because there are going to be days where you're like, okay, I just don't have the time. I have a huge paper coming up. I have a huge exam coming up, family crisis, whatever. That is totally understandable. And the idea of sharing this with another human being holds you even more accountable for doing it and actually sticking to it. She also recommends starting to write from day one of your research project. Even before you start reading a single article on that topic. Just start writing. Start saying, okay, I think that we have a deficit in this topic because just start whatever comes to mind. It might not be used at all in the future. But this idea of you writing it, you will start actually processing information. It will help you flesh out your own thoughts and where you want to take that project. And then organize your research around a template. That's why it helps to work with somebody who has already been publishing in that particular field. So a lot of the time I recommend my students to take one of my previous papers and just literally see how I organized it, how I outlined the paper, and for them to start applying their project onto that template. She has other steps. As I said, I believe there are 10 of them, but those are the first ones that I really wanted to emphasize today. So this idea that you can start writing, and the thing is, once you start writing and slowly start reading, not during those minutes that you write, of course, you will get a better sense of the project. And what she really highly recommends is when you write, don't stop to cite. Don't stop to verify what you just said is actually true and correct. So you can say, we still have traditional stereotypes in our society, parentheses, cite. I always put it in all caps. This means that, and I just continue writing. Later, not during my 15, 30 minutes, because I don't want to cheat here, right? I go back and I actually find the correct citations. But this idea that you just fluently just write whatever you think about, whatever you already read, and you kind of start incorporating it is going to be really, really helpful. And she actually has research that illustrates that doing this instead of that massive, oh my God, I have a week to write my thesis, actually leads to so many more publications. You a really good writer as well. That is all I have. Any questions, thoughts?
So the last piece that you mentioned, I think it was my first time hearing a method like that to just keep writing.
Yes.
What if I, so on day 10, I realize, I don't agree with myself anymore on what I wrote previously. Do I go back and change it?
No, just keep it. Continue writing.
It's like recording my thoughts.
Yes.
Okay. And then if I need to write my...
Because who knows, you might actually need at some point during your paper to say, well, some might say, or some might disagree, and you can actually pull back from your previous thoughts. And sometimes that even process of thinking and writing is again going to help you flash out your thoughts. So the fact that you disagreed with yourself previously is actually a good thing, right? Because think about it, if you just started writing and just putting that into a paper, you might have stuck with that original idea and didn't get the chance to figure it out yourself and disagree with yourself and come to a different conclusion.
So it sounds like that is a different piece from the actual research paper.
Yeah, I would say, again, at first, just start writing anything that relates to the project, just general ideas. It would be cool to look at this. Maybe this theory will help. Maybe this will be interesting to look at and things like that. And then you can start kind of narrowing it down. Okay, I'm interested, all right, I had a really good thought or research question here. I'm going to take this and then go read. And then the next day, hey, my 15, 30 minutes I'm going to spend on actually incorporating what I read yesterday or before that into a summary or something like that. But the important thing is during those 15, 30 minutes is not to do anything but write. You don't look up any citations, you don't read an article, you don't, because that's cheating, right? You need to that pure writing component. And I think just having that is really motivating yourself to keep going. It also motivates you. Some might have like a writer's block, so to speak. Pushing yourself through this is really helpful.
I just thought about the citation part. So I see myself catching myself cite because we're so used to like you have a cite and everything has to be APA and you have to like make sure you're backing this up. But it's good to know just that we can actually just write in our flow at that moment and just cite later.
Yep.
I do see maybe even writing more instead of having to think about, oh, where does this citation belong? So
Yep.
That was good to know.
Yeah. It doesn't prevent you with the flow of the writing of like, oh, okay, I need to now stop and go find that article. Or perhaps you just said something that you will not find a citation later on, which is actually a good revelation to even have in that moment as well. It's like, okay, does that mean that nobody researched that? Oh, another research project idea, right? So that can be helpful as well. Awesome. All right.